Hi, this is Mayor Cohen, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about some of the things, and there are many, that I'm really proud of, and one of the reasons that I picked East Brunswick as a place to live, and that's our Parks and Recreation Department, a department that has devoted itself continuously to looking out for the residents of East Brunswick and making sure that it provides programmings and opportunities and venues for those of us that live here in ways that make us enjoy East Brunswick. And there are three main things that I'd like to concentrate on with our department today. It's going to be our parks area, it's going to be our sports programs, and our arts programs. If you'd really have to be under a rock to have not recognized the type of work and effort that the department really put out for our residents, especially during this past year and a half of the pandemic. During this past year, our staff has been dedicated to making sure that we continue to provide programming, even though that might have had to pivot into a virtual type of format. They worked endlessly to make sure that the parks areas were open. I made sure that those were never closed down during the pandemic because we needed those areas to escape, to get out, to exercise, to relax, to blow off some steam as we were all stuck indoors during the lockdown. And of course, I'd like to thank our Township Council and all of the representatives that you've put in office to make sure that those areas, that part of the township and this department is continuously funded with the sources that they need to provide the services that we're all asking for them to provide. So let's kind of get into the areas that I wanted to talk about. First, parks. And again, we made sure that those stayed open. And I think if most of you had the opportunity to get out and enjoy some of the parks, you probably recognize some parks that you close to your home that you didn't even know existed before. And if you knew that it existed, didn't even know what was there. Frankly, one of the fun programs that the department ran this past year was a scavenger hunt where people were given an opportunity to look at the different parks and look for things that were being hidden. And in the process, learn about different parks and different sections of the township many people didn't even know existed here. East Brunswick, as you know, is a very large town, almost 50,000 people now, with lots of different areas, communities, neighborhoods. So that was a great opportunity to learn a little bit about your community and some of the parks that exist here in town that many people may not have had an opportunity to use. But going forward, we're actually looking to expand the park system here in East Brunswick. One of the sites I'm really proud to announce is the Freed site, which most of you may not know by that name. It's an old Superfund site at the end of Fresh Pond Roads near the border of Milltown. It was an old paint factory that over 40, almost 50 years ago was shut down because of contamination. Some of the paint solvents and contaminated chemicals got into the ground and into the deep water. And over the last 40 to 50 years, the DEP and the EPA have been cleaning that site. But we learned very early in my mayorship that that area had been pretty much cleaned and only a small area of deep water is still being cleaned in a corner pump station in the 17-acre property that's there. And now they've been able to, both agencies, the EPA and the DEP, and let me remind everybody, the New Jersey DEP is one of the strongest DEPs in the nation. They would not have given us a green light to utilize and to open up that area for passive recreation if they didn't believe that it was safe. So our intention is to open that up to the public, to make some walking trails, and to allow people to look at some of the sites there. There's vegetation, plants, animal life, that a bird sanctuary in an area that many people haven't been on in decades. So I think it's going to be a great source of pride and opportunity for people who are nature lovers and people who are just looking to find another place to get out and walk and enjoy the great outdoors right here in East Brunswick. And finally, there's another park that we're looking to bring online. That's not far from the Elks Lodge, right off of Oakmont Road, right bordering on Farrington Lake. There's a corner piece of property, several acres, that we're looking to develop primarily for Boys and Girl Scouts to use as training areas. But if anybody has an opportunity to go out there and look, it's township property. And honestly, the views of the lake and the it's really just breathtaking. And so I think that's going to be a great addition to our already large group of township parks. Going to pivot for a second to many of our sports programs. As you know, the Parks and Recreation Department has a coalition of athletic leagues here in town that have constantly been supporting youth sports. And in the last couple of years, we may have seen some new sports come online. We recently added tennis and lacrosse to our list of township-sponsored sports programs. But we're really proud of the fact that in the last couple of months, we've been able to clear an area at Bicentennial Park where we've put a pitch to provide a cricket program, and we're going to look ultimately to have a formal cricket field out on Heavenly Farms. Additionally, many of you have read that in the redevelopment zone and the area of 110 Tices, which is where the old Wonder Bread factory used to exist. At the back of that property, about 8 acres of it was deeded back to the township as part of the redevelopment financial agreement to the township to use for a public purpose. That's going to be developed into a township-owned hockey rink, probably putting about 2 rinks and then some additional all-purpose space that we could possibly use for basketball areas and other type of sports that can be done indoors when the weather makes it difficult to compete and to do sports outside. That's an exciting project also that's coming on board, but I want people and the residents to know that those things didn't come as a whim. They came from what we define as sustained efforts on the part of residents to advocate for those sports. How did they do that? In instances like hockey, for instance, for decades there have been groups of parents that were looking for the schools to put a hockey program in place. I remember I was one of them. During the redevelopment process, we actually had open town halls where people came in and voiced their concerns about the type of amenities they'd like to see that the developers might help us provide. Hockey was again mentioned at that time. There's been blog groups that have been writing and requesting that. There's been letters written to my office requesting that, and likewise for cricket. Leagues, individuals, people have come into the township looking for spots that they would sponsor, even at their own parents' own expense. So these are what we call sustained efforts on the part of residents to advocate for those sports. So when we write about these things, as I recently did in a TAP article, people write in about why not bocce courts or other things. And while those are all great ideas, that's not what we call a sustained effort, 3 or 4 people writing in on a Facebook thread. If those groups are out there, we're more than happy to take suggestions, and the department's always looking for new ideas, and those might be something that we'll do next. We certainly have taken that in the past. That's why you see pickleball courts that have been developed over the last couple of years, because that too came from resident input. So anybody who has great ideas or things they'd like to see, can't promise you that we could do all of them, but we do take your concerns, your letters, and your, again, sustained efforts into account when we come up with these new programs. So I'm really excited about the idea and the prospect of ice hockey here in East Brunswick and cricket. Finally, I'd like to devote a little bit of time to the arts. Many of you know that East Brunswick has tons and tons of art programs, whether it's arts programs that are done at the school level or arts programs that are done through the senior center, parks and recreation, the library, many venues which all seem to converge on the arts. But our Parks and Rec department is pretty much responsible for running that community arts center that we have right out on the corner of Dunham's and Cranberry Road. But when that was built on a very limited budget, and it was built in a way that allowed us to provide a venue for the arts, and that's where Playhouse 22 moved, and we have an all-purpose room. But it was always built with the idea that at some point in time when the need existed, that building and the land that we have there would be capable of us being allowed to expand that to the needs of the community. And it's kind of nice to say that we're really there at that point now. One of the things that we've are looking to do in our expansion project to the Community Arts Center is to try to do that in a way that costs you nothing. We're looking to raise the funds for that project from philanthropy, from government agencies that have money that they dedicate to the arts. And I'm happy to say that we did get our first influx of $1 million, thanks to Governor Murphy. And during his budget presentation, that there was $1 million that was set aside for the arts and for our particular project, which would include an expansion of the Community Arts Center. What are we looking to build there? Well, we'd like to bring in a black box theater, something that we don't have here in town or at any of our school facilities. We'd like to really make the outdoor space, after COVID, we certainly know the value of being able to do things outdoors. We'd really like to convert the space that we have to a true outdoor theater with stands and seating and lighting and a sound system, all that really matches the needs of a true outdoor theater. And we'd also like to make our bathrooms that are in the building accessible from outdoors. So that's all part of this project. We'd also like to ultimately move EBTV over there, put in some art galleries, and we're, again, keeping our eyes open, our minds open to suggestions from residents, for those people who really have a love for the arts, on what that building, that area could really mean. And I'm looking at that from more than really just an East Brunswick standpoint. It's a community arts center. We know from the records we keep in Parks and Rec, from the records that Playhouse 22 keeps, from the records that the East Brunswick Arts Coalition keeps on people who are showing interest in the arts and in the programming that we're providing, that it is primarily benefiting East Brunswick residents, but it is truly a community arts center. We get people interested in all of our programs from surrounding communities of South Brunswick and North Brunswick, New Brunswick, Monroe, Spotswood, Helmetta, South River, Old Bridge, Sayreville. They're all enjoying the arts and the programming that we're providing. So asking our county for a contribution, asking philanthropy and large institutional donors to contribute to that, really is meant to produce an arts venue that's worthy of the type of clientele and people that live here that are demanding high-grade art services. We would like to provide that, and I think we can do that. So I'm hoping that that capsule and this quick review gives you a little bit of some of the things that our Parks and Recs department are doing. Clearly, if anybody wants an idea of the programs that they're already running, you certainly are welcome to go onto their website or to go on their Facebook page. There's lots of classes and programs that they provide all year round. And I think that we should be very, very proud and thankful of the people who are working in that department and giving it the reputation that it holds. And for my part and on behalf of the council, it's our goals to make sure that they continue to have the funding to provide those type of programs that our residents deserve. Thank you.